Question: is karma or the severity of it dependent on the consciousness level you are at? So, for example, the same action of robbing a bank for a person at level 10 versus a person at level 60 who should know better, would that same action create a more severe karma energy impulse for the person at level 60? And that's a very interesting question. I would, based on my experience, I would put it a little differently. What I have observed, both in my own life and in spiritual movements I've been involved with, is that as spiritual people, it's not necessarily that the karma is more severe, but that it comes back to us quicker. It's more instant karma. I personally had a situation, I've talked about it before, where after I moved to the United States in 1987, I did something that was illegal in order to get a green card. And then later I married an American citizen, which means they should technically have disregarded what I did, but the local INS office didn't do that. So it took me a long time to get a green card again. And I always saw that myself, that this was my instant karma, because I should have known better. I should not have done that, which was illegal. And therefore I got the instant return so I could learn from it and overcome this attitude that many spiritual people have, that, oh, we are allowed to set aside the law if we don't hurt other people in order to fulfill our spiritual goals. In other words, I felt it's so important that I'm here in America in the spiritual movement where I can give all these decrees to help raise the planet, that it's okay that I cheat a little bit so I can continue to be here. And I've seen other people do the same with other things. For example, there was Summit Lighthouse I was in. Right around the same time, they were building these nuclear fallout bomb shelters, and they did something illegal, which also was exposed very quickly and had some severe ramifications for the organization. So my sense of it is that the lower people's consciousness have, the more time it actually takes before the karma comes back. And the reason for this is that the purpose of karma is a learning experience. And you could say, well, what good does it do that a person kills somebody and then several lifetimes later the person is killed? The person has no idea it's returning karma. What did the person learn from this? But you see, the thing is, when a person is in a very low state of consciousness, they're not open to learning from what they did. So therefore, by delaying the karmic return, there is at least a possibility that they could raise their consciousness in the meantime, so that the return doesn't have to be as severe. Whereas for people who are on the spiritual path, who are on a higher level of consciousness, we are more open than a person at a lower state to learning. And therefore, when the karma comes back in that same lifetime, as I did, you can look at it and say, okay, what do I need to learn from this? And I obviously needed to learn I shouldn't have done this, because I shouldn't believe that as a spiritual person you could set aside the laws of the land. It's like Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's and unto God that which is God's. And I didn't grasp that at the time. I thought, it's okay. And there were many other people that thought the same way. The whole organization probably thought the same way. That's why it got into this conflict with the authorities about the whole shelter building thing, you know. So, and I've seen it in other spiritual movements, the same thing. We think we are above the laws of the land because we are spiritual. And I'm not saying that this means spiritual people kill others or rob a bank, for example. I would have to say that a person at the 60th level of consciousness, I would really sincerely doubt that they would rob a bank. But I understand it's just an example. So what I'm saying is that many spiritual people, we are not doing something that deliberately hurts others. What I did and what the Summit did didn't hurt any people. But it was illegal. And so we can't allow ourselves to think that we can get away with this, even though we think we have a spiritual reason and it's so important. You see other spiritual movements. There's a documentary on Netflix called Wild Wild Country, which is about the Osho movement buying a big ranch in Oregon and building a community there. And if you watch that video, you can see the exact same attitude. They thought, or the laws don't apply to us because we are so spiritual and it's so important what we're doing. And this is just something that we as spiritual people need to overcome here in the age of Aquarius, because it's just not realistic. What I also want to say about this karma is, because the question is talking about, would that same action create a more severe energy impulse for the person at level 60 than at level 10, for example? And here's a different way to look at karma. So as I said, the more evolved you are, the higher you are in consciousness, the more instant your karmic return is going to be. But on the other hand, when you are at a higher level of consciousness, you don't have the intention of harming anybody. I mean, I did what I did, the summit did what I did, the ocean movement did what they did, not deliberately wanting to harm anybody, and not out of a disregard. It wasn't like it really hurt anybody. So it was not, because the intention was not deliberate to hurt anybody, it wasn't as severe of a karmic impulse. In other words, the intention for what you're doing has a lot to do with how intense the karmic impulse is you're sending out. So, I know again it's just an example, but you talk about a person at level 10 versus a person at level 60, that's a very, very big difference in consciousness, because level 10 is a very low level of consciousness where people are very, very self-centered, have no empathy, no disregard for their consequences. This is like really violent criminals, gang members, serial killers, dictators at that level, where they're willing to do atrocious things. And some of them really have the deliberate intention, either they don't care at all, or they deliberately want to hurt other people. Serial killers, rapists, people who torture others. I mean, this is the level, the 10th level. This is where that is at in attitude. And the more aggressive of an intent you have, the more severe the karma is that you're creating. The more intense the karmic, the energetic impulse you're sending out. Deep anger, deep hatred obviously creates much more severe karma than a person at a higher level of consciousness who really has no intention of hurting other people. So in other words, you could say a person at a higher level of consciousness accidentally kills another person, say in a car accident. But it was not deliberately done, it was not negligence, it was just an unfortunate event that happened. But a person did kill another person. Obviously it creates karma. But now take a person at the 10th level of consciousness who is deliberately abducting and raping a woman and killing her, and who may be very angry and hateful towards women and doing it out of that hatred. They're both killing another person, but obviously the person at the lower level of consciousness, it was a much more severe karma, much more intense energetic impulse that was sent out, and therefore the return will also be more intense. So there are many of these subtle considerations that come in. I don't claim that I understand all of them. I know there's in a group of Ascended Masters called the Karmic Board, and they are the ones who are charged with really dealing with this entire enormously complex web of karma that people have created on Earth. They've actually talked about it sometimes, that they have something that would be comparable to a supercomputer, but it's much more powerful than any supercomputer we have built. It's more of a quantum computer probably, that keeps track of all this. And contrary to popular belief, the Karmic Board is not looking to administer punishment. They are only looking at how could a person be helped to raise their consciousness. And that's why they look at this very complex web of karmic entanglements, and how can they best be worked out by a person taking embodiment in a certain situation, being grouped together with other people, so they have an opportunity to work out their karma. And it's enormously complex. As I said, I don't claim to understand it. I don't really want to understand it because I don't really want to be responsible for that on a planet like Earth. But it's certainly something that it's good to have a certain understanding of it. And it's certainly good, I think, for spiritual people to have this understanding that our intention has a lot to do with how severe of a karma we make, and therefore purifying our intention is very important. And how do you purify your intention? By resolving your psychology, because it's the subconscious selves that magnetize us into doing selfish things that harm other people. Even people at the lowest level of consciousness, it's their subconscious selves that are causing them to do torture of other people, for example. It's not that the conscious you is deciding, oh, I want that experience of how it is to kill somebody or torture somebody. It's not something the conscious you decides. It's all, once you go into separation and start creating the ego and all these subconscious selves, it becomes like, and I think this is probably also important to understand about karma, is that it becomes a self-reinforcing downward spiral. That once people go below the 48th level of consciousness, there gets a point where they lose control over their lives. Because they go into this state of denial, as I've said before. You go into separation, and you are denying that the physical circumstances you face are a result of your, or at least are tied to your state of consciousness. So you're thinking you are a victim, other people are doing this to you, or life is doing this to you, and therefore you react against it with hostility and with anger. And you just make it worse. You dig a deeper and deeper karmic hole for yourself. And as I said, this is a school of hard knocks, and the purpose is, because people are unreachable for the Ascended Masters, the purpose is they get to a point where they can't stand it anymore, and now they cry out for deliverance, and now they are willing to at least consider what they could do to change themselves in order to change the outer situation. And this is obviously, as I have said before, this is plan B for the Ascended Masters. It's not how they want people to learn. But on an unnatural planet like Earth, this is the only way that many people can learn, being in the school of hard karmic knocks, where they just make the knocks harder and harder until they break under the strain and can't deal with it anymore. Not a good way to learn, but that's why as spiritual people, as I said, we need to realize that the alternative is that we consciously walk the spiritual path and resolve these subconscious selves that create the downward spiral. And this is what we have done in past lives, and we have done it by following the golden rule, looking at ourselves, not allowing ourselves to do unto others what others are doing to us. That's how we turn around on the downward slide. We turn the downward slide because you see people who are trapped in this downward self-reinforcing spiral. They're always thinking, other people did this to me, so it's okay that I do this to them. You can see it. Why is there a war in the Middle East right now? For thousands of years, they've had this retaliation. You did something to us, we're doing something to you. But hey, you did something to us, we're doing something. When is it ever going to end? Well, it's going to end when they start realizing the wisdom of this you find in all religions: turn the other cheek, do unto others. Because when you don't do to others what they did to you, you are turning around the downward spiral. And you can then start growing until you reach the 48th level, where you can consciously see yourself as a connected being, start walking the spiritual path and raising your consciousness systematically. So, karma is a teacher, and this is how it works. You dig yourself into a hole by doing unto others what they do to you, until you come to that moment of realization and says, maybe I should stop doing unto others what they are doing to me, because it's better for me in the long run.